Imagine the morning after. The bombs have stopped. Tehran is quiet in a way it has not been quiet in months. The supreme leader is dead. The IRGC command structure is shattered. The missile sites are rubble. And 93 million Iranians wake up and ask the same question at the same moment. What happens now? Who is in charge? Who speaks for Iran at the negotiating table? Who controls the oil fields? Who controls the nuclear stockpile of 440 kilograms of highly enriched uranium that someone, somewhere, still has access to? And in trading rooms from New York to Singapore, from London to Shanghai, the same question is being asked with slightly different words. What does a post-Islamic Republic Iran do to oil prices, to gold, to Bitcoin, to the dollar? To every portfolio, every pension fund, every mortgage rate in the Western world. Because here is the brutal truth that Washington appears not to have fully planned for. Destroying the old order is the easy part. History has proven that repeatedly. It is what comes after that determines whether a war was worth fighting. And right now, nobody in Washington, Jerusalem, or Tehran has a clean answer. Stay with me, because we are going to walk through every realistic scenario for what a new Iran looks like, who leads it, what it does to energy markets, and what it means for your wallet. Let's dive in. First, let's zoom out to the bigger picture, because before we can talk about what comes next, we need to understand what is actually left. The Islamic Republic of Iran is not just a government, it is a system built over 47 years with layers of religious authority, military power, economic control, and ideological infrastructure that penetrates every level of Iranian society. You cannot bomb a system out of existence the way you bomb a missile silo. What the US-Israeli campaign has done is decapitate the top layer. The supreme leader is dead. Key IRGC commanders are dead or displaced. Nuclear facilities have been significantly damaged. The Air Force is largely destroyed. The naval surface fleet has been degraded. But the layers below are still there. The Revolutionary Guard units still exist in dozens of cities. The besieged militia, the domestic enforcement arm of the IRGC, with hundreds of thousands of members, is still largely intact. The clerical establishment, the network of ayatollahs and Friday prayer leaders and religious seminaries in Qom that provide the ideological backbone of the regime, has not been touched by a single bomb. And Iran's bureaucracy, its oil ministry, its finance ministry, its agriculture ministry, its police forces, all continue to function at some level. The question is not whether there is a functioning state left. There is. The question is who controls it and whether they can hold it. Let's map the opposition, because this is where things get genuinely complicated and, frankly, genuinely alarming for anyone who remembers what happened in Iraq in 2003 or Libya in 2011. The Iranian opposition is not a unified movement with a single leader, a clear ideology, and an agreed plan for governance. It is a fractured collection of exile groups, domestic activists, ethnic minority movements, monarchists, leftists, liberals, Islamist reformers, and everyone in between, many of whom despise each other nearly as much as they despise the Islamic Republic. Let's go through the main players. The most prominent figure in the exile opposition is Reza Pahlavi. He is the son of the last Shah, Mohammad Reza Pahlavi, who was overthrown in 1979. He is 65 years old. He lives in the United States, primarily in the Washington, D.C. area. He has positioned himself not as a king seeking restoration, but as a Democrat seeking to facilitate a transition to a secular, elected government in Iran. He speaks fluent English and is comfortable in Western media. He has significant name recognition inside Iran, particularly among older Iranians who remember the Shah era, and among younger Iranians who associate that era with economic prosperity relative to today. In July 2025, Pahlavi hosted a conference of opposition activists in Munich, claiming that at least 50,000 officials from inside Iran's government and military had registered through a secure channel to coordinate the ousting of the Iranian government. The Wall Street Journal describes him as the most visible and recognizable figure in the exile opposition. But here is the problem. Reza Pahlavi has never held political office. He has never managed a government or an economy or a military. His father's government was overthrown because of its brutality, its inequality, and its alienation from ordinary Iranians. Many Iranians who despise the Islamic Republic are also deeply uncomfortable with the idea of a return to monarchy, even a constitutional one. And his support base inside Iran, while real, is heavily concentrated among the urban, educated, Western-oriented middle class. It does not extend uniformly to Iran's ethnic minorities, its religious conservatives, its rural poor, or its working class. The second major organized opposition force is the Mujahideen-e-Khalq, known as the MEK, or by their Persian acronym MKO. Led by Maryam Rajavi, the MEK is the most organizationally capable exile opposition group. It has a structured hierarchy, a military wing, a media operation, and a network of political supporters in Washington and European capitals that has included, at various points, former Vice President Mike Pence, former Secretary of State Mike Pompeo, and former New York Mayor Rudy Giuliani. The MEK proposes a 6-month provisional government period following the regime's overthrow, culminating in free elections for a constituent assembly to draft a new constitution for a democratic, secular republic. But the MEK carries enormous baggage. It was designated a foreign terrorist organization by the United States from 1997 until 2012. It collaborated with Saddam Hussein during the Iran-Iraq War, fighting alongside the Iraqi army against fellow Iranians. It is widely despised inside Iran, including by many people who hate the Islamic Republic. Multiple Iran analysts describe the MEK as having almost no genuine popular base inside the country. Its support comes almost entirely from Washington lobbying and the exile community. A government installed with MEK leadership would face immediate and probably violent rejection from large segments of the Iranian population. The third cluster of opposition forces is the ethnic and regional movements. Iran is not an ethnically homogeneous country. Persians make up approximately 61% of the population. The remaining 39% includes Azerbaijanis in the northwest, who are roughly 16% of the population and have deep cultural and linguistic ties to Azerbaijan next door. Kurds in the west, accounting for around 10% of the population, have been fighting for greater autonomy for decades. Baloch in the southeast, a Sunni minority in a Shia-dominated state that has experienced some of the harshest repression under the Islamic Republic. Arabs in Khuzestan, sitting on top of 80% of Iran's oil reserves, who have their own autonomy and cultural rights demands. These ethnic groups are not seeking to overthrow the Islamic Republic simply to hand power to a Persian exile in Washington. They have their own agendas, their own armed factions in some cases. And the day the Islamic Republic's central authority weakens, these centrifugal forces will pull in different directions simultaneously. DW reported in March 2026 that the scenario of Iran fragmenting along ethnic lines, while not inevitable, is a real risk that no post-conflict plan has adequately addressed. Now let's zoom out to the 4 scenarios that most serious analysts have identified. Scenario 1, the best case. Managed transition. The IRGC surrenders, as Trump has publicly demanded. A provisional government, potentially led by Reza Pahlavi or a council of opposition figures, is established with international support. Free elections are organized within 6 to 12 months. Iran signs a new nuclear deal, surrenders its enriched uranium stockpile and centrifuges to the United States, and renounces long-range ballistic missiles. US and European oil companies get access to Iran's energy sector. Within 2 to 3 years, Iran's oil production recovers from today's 3.2 million barrels per day toward its potential capacity of somewhere between 4 and 5 million barrels per day. The Strait of Hormuz reopens fully. Iranian oil flows back into global markets. The war risk premium drains out of oil prices. Rystad Energy's scenario analysis estimates that in this best case, oil prices fall by around $5 per barrel initially, with Iranian production recovering gradually over 18 to 24 months. Not a price crash, a gradual normalization. Gold gives back some of its war premium gains. Bitcoin and risk assets recover as geopolitical uncertainty fades. The dollar remains stable. This is the scenario Trump appears to have in mind when he talks about a 4 to 5 week campaign. But analysts at The Guardian, DW, and the Wilson Center have all described this as the least likely scenario, because the preconditions for it, a unified opposition, a compliant IRGC, a population willing to accept a US-endorsed government, simply do not exist in sufficient measure. Scenario 2, a new strongman. The IRGC does not surrender, but it is too weakened to hold the entire country. A new figure emerges from the surviving clerical and military establishment, perhaps a politically weak supreme leader, manipulated by a surviving IRGC faction. Perhaps a hardline cleric similar to Khomeini, who positions himself as the legitimate successor of the revolution. This new leadership negotiates with Trump. It accepts enough concessions, some limits on the nuclear program, some reduction in proxy activity, to allow Washington to declare a partial victory and withdraw. But the fundamental structure of the Islamic Republic survives in modified form. This scenario is what The Guardian describes as one of the most plausible outcomes. It parallels what happened in Libya after Gaddafi gave up his nuclear program in 2003. The government changed its behavior on the specific issue the West cared most about, but the authoritarian system survived. Iran's oil exports remain constrained by residual sanctions and infrastructure damage. Production falls to around 2.6 million barrels per day in the near term, according to Rystad energy analysis. Oil prices carry a structural premium of $10 to $15 per barrel above where they would otherwise trade. Gold remains elevated as uncertainty persists. The proxy network, without central coordination from Tehran, becomes more unpredictable, not less dangerous. Scenario 3, civil war. This is the scenario that keeps everyone up at night. The regime collapses, but so does the state. The IRGC fractures along factional lines. Some units fight for survival, others negotiate for immunity, others simply melt away into civilian populations. The ethnic minorities in Azerbaijan, Kurdistan, Khuzestan, and Baluchistan use the power vacuum to push for autonomy or independence. Armed militias form across the country. The provisional government, if one forms at all, cannot project authority beyond Tehran. Violence spreads. This is not hypothetical. It is what happened in Libya after NATO's 2011 campaign destroyed Gaddafi. Libya had oil, it had a recognizable opposition leader, it had international support, and it still descended into civil war that continues to this day, 15 years later. Libya produced 1.6 million barrels of oil per day before the war. In the decade after the war, it rarely managed even half that. Iran produces 3.2 million barrels per day today. A Libya-style fragmentation of Iran would not just cut that number. It would also put the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps units in Khuzestan and along the Persian Gulf Coast in the hands of whoever controls them locally, with unpredictable consequences for the Strait of Hormuz. Oil prices in this scenario do not stabilize. They spike, and keep spiking. Rystad Energy's analysis of wider conflict scenarios suggests rapid price increases of at least $15 per barrel, with further upside risk if Hormuz transit is genuinely threatened. In a full civil war scenario, the upside to oil is not $15. It is $50 or more. And the ripple effects for global inflation, for Federal Reserve policy, for stock markets, for every American household are catastrophic. Scenario 4, the North Korea outcome. This is the darkest scenario. The surviving leadership concludes that the lesson of this war is not that Iran needs to be less aggressive. It is that Iran needs a nuclear deterrent before it negotiates anything. The 440 kilograms of highly enriched uranium that Iran has stockpiled, sufficient for approximately 10 warheads with further enrichment, is moved to deeper underground locations beyond the reach of available bunker-busting munitions. International inspectors are expelled. The remaining nuclear scientists who cannot be bombed accelerate the weaponization work. And within 12 to 18 months, Iran tests a device. Not a working weapon necessarily, a demonstration. A demonstration that says to Washington and Jerusalem, you cannot bomb us into compliance. You have only made us more dangerous. This scenario parallels North Korea's trajectory after the Korean War. A regime that concluded its survival required nuclear deterrence and was willing to accept any level of economic isolation to achieve it. A nuclear-armed but severely weakened Iran in civil war or under military governance is, by most assessments, more dangerous than the Islamic Republic was before the war. Because the Islamic Republic, for all its hostility, was a rational actor that made strategic calculations. A desperate, cornered regime with a nuclear weapon and nothing left to lose is not a rational actor. It is the scenario that the architects of the current war most need to prevent. Now let's talk about what all of this means for oil, gold, Bitcoin, and your wallet. Because this is the dollar endgame, and every scenario has a financial signature. Start with oil. In the best-case managed transition scenario, oil prices fall modestly and gradually as Iranian supply returns to markets. But even in the best case, infrastructure damage, sanctions legacy, and the pace of political reconstruction mean Iranian production recovers slowly, over years, not months. The war premium in oil prices does not disappear overnight. It fades gradually as uncertainty reduces. Gas prices at the pump follow oil prices with a lag of about 2 to 6 weeks. In the best case, American drivers see some relief by late 2026 or early 2027, but not before they have absorbed months of elevated prices. In the Civil War or North Korea scenario, oil does not come down. It goes higher. Iranian supply stays off the market for years. The Strait of Hormuz carries ongoing risk premiums into every shipping contract. OPEC's spare capacity, never abundant, is insufficient to fully replace Iranian volumes in a sustained disruption. And $100, $120, $150 oil is not a tail risk in those scenarios. It is the base case. Now gold. Gold has already surged significantly since the conflict began. It touched $5,300 and $5,400 per ounce in the initial stages of the crisis. In every post-war scenario except the clean, best-case managed transition, gold stays elevated. Because gold is not just an oil hedge. Gold is a hedge against everything that destabilizes the dollar system. War spending, deficit expansion, Federal Reserve policy paralysis, global dollar reserve diversification. The structural pressures on the dollar that we discussed in the petrodollar video do not reverse when the bombs stop falling. They accelerate. Because every month of war adds hundreds of billions to the US national debt. Every percentage point of energy-driven inflation forces the Fed into an impossible choice. And every month that China keeps buying Iranian oil in yuan is a month that the petrodollar system loses a little more ground. In the Civil War or North Korea scenario, gold at $6,000 or $7,000 per ounce is not unimaginable. Not in the next month, but in the next 2 to 3 years of sustained Middle East instability. Bitcoin. This is where it gets complicated. Bitcoin's response to this war has been volatile and contradictory. In the initial shock phase, Bitcoin sold off with risk assets. Fear drives people to cash and gold, not crypto. But here is the longer-term picture. If the post-war scenario involves currency instability in Iran itself, Iranians historically turn to Bitcoin and USDT stablecoins as a way to preserve value outside the rial. If the war drags on and US deficits expand further, Bitcoin's narrative as digital gold, as a hedge against fiat debasement, becomes more compelling over time. If the post-war Iran integrates into a BRICS-adjacent trading system that further reduces dollar dominance, the long-term case for non-dollar denominated stores of value strengthens. Bitcoin in 2026 is still primarily a risk asset. Short-term war fear hurts it. Long-term dollar structural decline helps it. The question is which time frame you are playing.
This is a complete failure.
Let's zoom out one final time. Here is the uncomfortable truth about post-conflict Iran. The United States and Israel have a plan for what to destroy. They do not appear to have an agreed plan for what to build. The opposition is fractured. The population is traumatized. The ethnic minorities have competing agendas. The IRGC still has guns. The nuclear knowledge still exists. And 93 million Iranians who were already impoverished by sanctions are now watching their infrastructure being bombed by the countries they were told for 47 years were their mortal enemies. The history of American military interventions in the Middle East does not suggest that this ends cleanly. Iraq took 20 years and trillions of dollars and still has IRGC-aligned militias running parts of its government. Afghanistan took 20 years and still reverted to the Taliban within weeks of American withdrawal. Libya has been in civil war for 15 years. But Iran is not Iraq, or Libya, or Afghanistan. It is larger, it is more educated, it has a longer tradition of statehood and national identity. A Persian civilization that has outlasted every empire that tried to conquer it. And its people, as multiple polls and the history of the 2022 protests show, do genuinely want something different from what the Islamic Republic has given them. The question is whether the aftermath of these bombs gives them the space to build it themselves, or whether it simply replaces one set of problems with a different and possibly worse set. Could 2026 be Iran's 1989? The moment a repressive system collapses and something genuinely new and better emerges. Or is it Iran's 2003? The moment a repressive system collapses and something worse fills the void. That is the question that will determine the next decade of global energy prices, Middle East stability, and American financial health. And I want to know what you think. Drop your answer in the comments below, because this video closes out our Iran series, but the Endgame channel is just getting started. Next, we are going deep into gold, why it is surging, how high it can go, what the smart money is actually doing right now. And why the move in gold since 2020 is unlike anything we have seen since the 1970s. That video is coming very soon. Subscribe, hit the bell, and I will see you there.